Well, one team's recruiting treasure comes at the peril of another school, of course. Zach Seyko of Locked On Nittany Lions is here. That's the way that flips work, Zach. One team is getting unexpectedly great news, and another team is left trying to figure out what the heck goes on. So, has Happy Valley turned into Sad Valley now that Peyton Falzone is committed to Auburn?
That's funny. That's clever.
Thank you.
Not quite too much. I do think this is a big deal personally to me. I do think there is the key word you said is unexpected because that's literally what happened. The only people that I think knew this was going to happen were the Auburn coaches, maybe the Penn State coaches. They got some word on this, but nobody within the Auburn media, the Penn State media, knew that this was going to happen. And this was a pretty quick turnaround, if I say. Falzone was offered a month ago, did not have any visits with Auburn, and then all of a sudden he takes a flip. This seems very NIL motivated, to say the least, because when you have no prior visits, no prior connections, I just think that Auburn had a nice NIL offer that Penn State either A, was not willing to counter, or B, could not counter. And I also think there is the appeal of being the only quarterback in Auburn's class. Maybe they made that promise to him. Who knows? But now you don't have two quarterbacks in this class of 2026 if you're Penn State. They did have the insurance. You have one quarterback, so it's not like Penn State is spiraling here. But I do think it's a big deal because Peyton Falzone has so much upside if he can figure out some throwing mechanics. He has 5-star athleticism, but 2.5, 3-star when it comes to passing mechanics at this point in time.
Talk about the other quarterback they have committed, because it's not unheard of for schools to take two quarterbacks in a given recruiting cycle, but do you think that contributed at all to Falzone being willing to flip away from the Nittany Lions? And, who is the other recruit?
I think we're getting into territory where it is unheard of. Penn State tries to do this. They did it with Bo Prabula and Drew Allar in that class of 2022. And I think for the most part, it worked out. Bo Prabula got a chance to develop, and I think he has a very promising opportunity to start for Missouri this year, because that's what the transfer portal is for. Go where you can develop, see where the chips fall, and you just very well might be the quarterback that ultimately emerges. I don't know that that Peyton Falzone was scared of that, but I do think two quarterbacks that's going to be a thing of the past in recruiting classes. It's going to be very difficult, and I acknowledge that when they did get his commitment initially. As far as Troy Hune goes, Hune is I would say a higher floor, but not as high of a ceiling. He is the better pocket passer. He's got a little mobility, but where Falzone is a true dual threat quarterback, Troy Hune is your pocket passer. Penn State probably, in the scheme of things, if they had to prefer which one to keep, they'd probably Troy Hune. Troy Hune's just a better overall quarterback in terms of how he operates as a passer, as a signal caller, somebody who can read defenses. Falzone needs to do a lot of catching up with that, but as that dual threat, you do have that element in college that's really going to help you out early on.
You mentioned that Hune is not necessarily the flashiest recruit, but is just kind of solid and such. But
Yep.
let me throw this idea at you, because you brought up the NIL factor earlier, potentially with Peyton Falzone going to Auburn all of a sudden. Do you think that because Hune was in the fold, or Hune, sorry, Troy Hune was in, or is in the fold for Penn State's recruiting class, and they feel like they have a solid floor there, that contributed perhaps to them not wanting to go and pay Falzone whatever Auburn was perhaps willing to pay? Or do you think it's more likely that Penn State just physically didn't have the dollars? Because of those two scenarios, to me, if it came down to NIL, we don't know that for certain. The first scenario seems more likely to me. How do they land to you?
So this is just how Penn State operates. They are not going to get into serious bidding wars. That's just when it comes to NIL. So one, they operate that way, and two, I just don't think they had dollars in hand this cycle. You paid Drew Allar, Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen, Denai Dennis Sutton, Zach Wheatley, Zane Durant. You paid a lot of veterans, and I didn't even name everybody. Spencer, I could go on for another 60 seconds about who they paid to retain a national title contending roster, which means you're going to take a hit in recruiting for the next immediate cycle. Because 2027 already has 3 top 50 players committed. Well, that's not by accident, because Penn State is A, still very good at recruiting, and B, little more NIL after Aller, Singleton, Allen, Denai Dennis Sutton all go off to the NFL, right? Because now you can focus your resources in other places. But that 2 quarterback element, hey, look, it's all of it. Auburn was more competitive with NIL. They did not have a quarterback. And the situation's fairly similar between Auburn and Penn State, that even though there would have been 2 quarterbacks in the class of 2026, it's about the outlook. He's behind Deuce Knight with Auburn. I would find that personally a little more, look, I know they're not intimidated by competition, but that would seem more like an uphill battle to go up against a 5-star that's 1 year ahead of you in eligibility than someone that might be on a little level playing field at Penn State.
I think I agree with you on that front. At least on paper. Sometimes recruits on paper don't pan out to live up to their full potential. But without Falzone in the mix, what does a post-Drew Aller world look like at quarterback for Penn State? Because I don't remember. I have never. Here's a fun fact for you, Seyko, and for everybody else up there. I have never in my entire life, in a professional capacity, covered college football on a regular basis with Drew Allar not being the starting quarterback at Penn State. How about that?
Oh, that's interesting.
How about that? He's been the whole time.
Yeah.
The whole time. Our careers have coincided. He's about to be a top pick in the NFL draft, and I hope to have similar success.
Well, but that is the thing. Falzone gives Penn State at least a little more reassurance that the depth chart isn't going. And now there's the transfer portal. So there's going to be a situation that we might not even see on the horizon, because Penn State doesn't want to go to the transfer portal for a quarterback, but they very well might have to in terms of the depth chart. They might. So that's Penn State has options. This isn't the end all be all here. Like, oh, they don't have Falzone anymore, so the depth chart is in awful standing the second Aller goes off to the NFL. It just gets a little more questionable. You had that guarantee. You have somebody certain and somebody that goes through the foundation of it all. With the transfer portal, you don't know what you're getting until they arrive on campus, at least with recruiting and active relationships. They've been recruiting Falzone for multiple years now. Not as a quarterback, but just as a football player, because he's that good of an athlete. So they know Falzone. So you lose that chemistry element of it. So do you want to take that chance on a quarterback in the transfer portal that maybe you didn't recruit originally, try to bring him in, mesh him with the depth chart? You just lose another reliable player on the depth chart, because there's going to be a QB battle next off season, or this upcoming off season after Aller goes to the NFL. The loser will go into the portal. Either it's Ethan Grunkemeyer or Jackson Smolik, and then it's Troy Hune, Beckham Kritza. Hopefully he's still developing at least at the right trajectory, and no Peyton Falzone. So that's kind of Penn State's outlook at this point, and it was a lot better with Falzone in the equation as opposed to not.